A blessed morning to all of you. It gives me immense joy again to share God's word with all of us this morning. Most of us love music and musical instruments. But have you ever heard any instrument that was really out of tune? It's not enjoyable. What's worse is when the person playing the instrument doesn't even realize that it is out of tune. On the other hand, any musician knows that you can get an instrument perfectly in tune, but if after tuning it, the instrument sits neglected or not used for a very long time, it's not going to stay in tune. Instruments require constant retuning. It's the same with our heart. Our hearts need constant retuning with God. So this morning, I want to spend some time meditating with all of you on the theme, having a heart that is tuned with God. When we look into Psalm 139, verses 23 and 24, David says, "Search me, O God, I know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." In this psalm, we see the heart of David. He was a person who was always having a close communion with the Lord. So much so, he was called a man after God's own heart. That means he was a man who desired to know God more and always wanted to be in the center of God's will. So in these two verses, David asked God to do three things in his life. If we could sincerely ask God to do the same things in our life, we might also be considered as a person who seeks after God's heart. So the very first thing that David asked God to do is, "Search me, O God, and know my heart." Bible says that the heart is the center of our life. In Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23, Solomon says, "Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life." Now, heart is the seat of all emotions. The expressions of our feeling comes out from the heart. Whether it is joy, happiness, sorrow, anger, or frustration, everything comes out from the heart. That's why Jeremiah 17:9 says, "The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it?" Now, no one knows our heart better than the one who created it. That's why in Psalm 139, verse 23, David is asking God, "Search me." The literal meaning here means examine closely. David did not try to hide anything from God, because earlier in verses 7 to 12, he says, "Where can I go from your presence, Lord?" It was impossible. In fact, David did not want to hide from God. He wanted God to find out who he was from the inside. He wanted God to know his heart. Dear friends, the truth that God knows all about us should bring great hope, because even though he knows everything about you, he still loves you. It was his love that came searching for you and me. He took the heart that was dead in sin and revived it again. That's why David was willing to have God search him and discover even the things that were unpleasant and unrighteous. Not to simply know about himself, but that he would remove those unpleasant things and stand approved in God's sight. The question this morning is, how is your heart? Does it have the same desire that David had? God is looking for hearts that long for him, his presence, and have communion with him. In 1 Samuel 16:7, we read, But the Lord said unto Samuel, I am not interested in what you look like from the outside. I am interested in your heart. The Lord looketh on the heart. God already knew what was in David's heart. But David asked God to reveal it to him, that he may correct his ways. We should ask God to look into the very center of our lives, our hearts. The second thing that David asks of God is, try me and know my thoughts. Next, David asks God to literally put him to the test. Here, David is asking God to try him. The word here actually means to refine him so that he would remain pure in all the areas of his life. Just like any metal that goes through fire to evaluate their purity, like gold, which is heated time and time again to bring all the impurities to the surface where they can be removed. That is what David is asking God to do. There is a beautiful encouragement in 1 Peter chapter 1 verse 7, where Apostle Peter says that the trials of your faith, being much more precious than of gold that perisheth, though it be tried with fire, might be found unto praise and honor and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ. One of the ways that God refines His children is through trials in our life. David goes on and he prays that God might know his very thoughts. He was literally asking God to read his mind. He also wanted to see honestly within himself as he was. Here David requests that God might look into his life and show those things that need to be removed. Only God can reveal the things that need to be mended, corrected in our life. Failing to know our own weaknesses will leave us vulnerable to those trials and temptations in those areas of our life. Knowing the areas that need to change and improve is the only way to grow spiritually. The third thing that David asks God to do is, lead me in the way everlasting. Finally, David concludes by asking God for direction and guidance. David now gets into the heart of his desire, in that he desired to be led by the Lord all the time. He knows and he understands that if he wants to walk in the path of righteousness, it is only by following the way of the Lord. And this is not just any way, it is the way everlasting. Proverbs 14:12 says, there is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. If we want to be used by God and want to have a heart after God, we must seek Him. That means we must admit that we need His direction in our lives. We must be willing to follow His footsteps all the time. The choice is ours. If we want to have the blessing of God upon our lives, we need to be people who long to commune with God, having a heart that is tuned with God. Dear friends, may David's prayer be our prayer too. Lord, search me, try me, and lead me. May God bless us all. Until next week, take care and God bless.